watching a debate and it just feels like the two sides are living in completely different realities. Well, it turns out they kind of are. Every policy, every big public effort, it doesn't start with some objective fact. Nope, it starts with how we choose to see a situation. So let's dive into this because understanding how problems get defined or framed is one of the most powerful tools for understanding how our world actually gets shaped.
Right. This is the big question, isn't it? It's not always that one person is right and the other is just plain wrong. The answer is usually hiding in this powerful, almost invisible process called policy framing. It's this structured choice that happens right at the beginning that basically determines everything that comes next.
I mean, just think about something we all deal with, traffic. It's real, you can't deny it. But how you frame it changes everything. You could look at a traffic jam and say, the problem is simple, we don't have enough roads. The obvious solution then is to build more highways, right? But you could look at that exact same traffic jam and say, no, the problem is our complete reliance on cars. And suddenly, the solution is totally different. Invest in trains, buses, bike lanes. Same situation, two completely different problems, leading to radically different solutions. That is framing in action.
Okay, so let's really pin this down. What exactly is this thing we're calling framing? Because it goes way, way deeper than just simple messaging or political spin.
At its heart, framing is about choosing what to shine a spotlight on, and just as important, what to leave in the shadows. It's about taking a messy, complicated reality and organizing it. You select certain facts, you suggest a cause, you appeal to specific values, and you make it all make sense as a particular kind of problem that, needs a particular kind of solution. And this quote just nails it. Pay attention to that word constitutive. That's a fancy way of saying framing doesn't just describe a problem that's already sitting there. It literally creates the problem in the public's mind. It sets the rules of the game before anyone even starts playing. It decides who gets a seat at the table, what facts matter, and what solutions are even on the menu. And that's why it's so crucial to see that framing is not the same thing as spin. Spin is about manipulating opinion, maybe twisting facts to sell an idea you already have. Framing is more fundamental. It's that essential first step of just making a tangled issue understandable so we can even start to have a conversation about it. It defines the problem itself. So to really get a handle on this, let's look at it through 4 different theoretical lenses. Think of these as 4 different pairs of glasses that help us see the hidden mechanics of how framing actually works out there in the real world. First up, we have social constructivism. The big idea here is that problems aren't just out there waiting for us to find them, like discovering a new planet. No, we as a society decide what a problem is. We build that reality through our conversations and shared beliefs. What one community sees as a full-blown crisis, another might see as just the way things are. It all comes down to social agreement. Next, let's put on the glasses of discourse analysis. This lens zooms right in on the words we use, because language is never neutral. Just think about it. Calling something a war on drugs demands a totally different response than calling it a public health crisis, right? The stories we tell, the symbols we use, they are incredibly powerful tools for building our understanding of a problem. Our third lens is critical theory, and this is the one that asks the really tough questions. Who gets to do the framing in the first place? Whose voice gets turned up and whose gets muted? This reminds us that framing is always a political act. It creates winners and losers, and more often than not, the dominant way of seeing a problem just happens to serve the interests of those who already have power. And finally, there's institutional theory. This perspective shows us how our existing systems, our laws, government agencies, even cultural norms, they create a kind of path of least resistance for certain ways of thinking. If you can frame a problem so it fits neatly into an existing department's budget and mission, it's got a much better chance of getting traction than some radical new idea that makes everyone uncomfortable. Okay, so we've got the theory down. Now let's see how it works in practice. We're going to take these 4 lenses and apply them to one of the biggest, most complicated debates out there: healthcare reform. Check out how this plays out. You can see at least 3 major frames competing here, and each one connects back to the theories we just talked about. First, there's the economic frame. It's all about rising costs. This fits perfectly with our existing market-based systems. That's institutional theory right there. Then you have the social equity frame, which highlights disparities and challenges the power structures that benefit from the current system. That's a classic critical theory lens. And finally, the personal responsibility frame, which focuses on individual choice. That's a social constructivist move, defining health as a private matter through a shared set of values. So, you see, the problem of healthcare isn't just one thing. Is it a moral imperative, an economic bomb waiting to go off, or a personal challenge? The frame that wins out sets the entire tone of the debate. It dictates the whole conversation before a single bill is even written.
All right, now that you can see the mechanics behind all of this, you have a seriously powerful new tool. And this isn't just for academics or politicians, this is a tool for anyone who wants to be a smarter, more engaged citizen. You can now look right past the shouting on the surface of a debate and see the architecture holding it all up underneath. So I want you to give this a shot. Pick an issue that you care about, something that's in the news right now, and just ask yourself, how is this problem being defined? Who's defining it that way? And could I define it differently?
And hey, if you need some ideas, think about any of these heavy hitters. Is climate change being framed as an environmental crisis, an economic opportunity, a national security threat? Each of those frames sends us down a completely different road. The same is true for immigration, gun control, and this huge emerging debate around regulating AI.
So here's a simple toolkit to get you started. First, just try to identify the different frames out there. How are different groups talking about the problem? Second, listen closely to the language. What words, what metaphors are they using? Crisis, invasion, opportunity, freedom. Those words are doing a lot of work. Third, always question the power. Who benefits when we see the problem this way, and whose story gets left out? And finally, the most creative step, imagine alternatives. What if we frame this issue in a completely new way? What new solutions might pop up then?
Because that's the real power here. Once you can see the frame, you're no longer trapped by it. You can question it, you can challenge it, and you can take part in the most important part of any public debate, deciding not just what the answer should be, but what the problem really is in the first place. And that's a power every single one of us can use.